You're listening to Conflict Radio on the Conflict Radio Network. Greetings, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is December 21st, 2020. It is the winter solstice, and it is 1:30 in the morning here, but we have got Tracey Ash, who has decided to join us for an interview here late in the morning. She is a force of disclosure on revolutionary consciousness technologies, sovereign humanity pathways, planetary grid, and smashing the false matrix. Tracey Ash is a global ascension leader and new earth builder, initiated Sufi, Alchemist and Mystic. She is an ascension and metaphysics maverick and contact genius. She is trained at World-Class College of Physics Studies, London, and mentored by President Suzanna McInnerey, who in 1999 gifted her first contract. She worked at CPS from 1999 to 2015 while building an international career on her extraordinary gifts. She's going to join us, and we're going to talk about Ascension and what, well, I guess she thinks is really going on in the world today and how important this time is to us and how timelines are corroding and we can stop it. So let's just get right to it. I got to get this up as soon as possible. This is Tracey Ash on Conflict Radio right after this. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. I've got Tracey Ash on the line, and we don't have her for very long. We're very pleased to have her. Tracey, why don't you give us some idea of what you've been doing the last few months?
Okay, I've been on an intensive research journey in ancient Egypt. I've been based out in Egypt for the last, 4 months. For the last 10 years, I've been working the gateways, researching extremely deeply in terms of how the technologies work, how the ancient sites work in terms of the timelines. So that's been a massive part of my quest in terms of assisting the ascension, and the timelines can indeed be reset through particular ancient gateways. Currently, I'm establishing a project which is sitting right on 5 major gateways. And I have access to, of course, all 5. And from my property, I can see all 5. So I've got Dashur, Saqqara, Abu Sir, Abu Ghurab, and the Great Pyramids of Giza, all within sight of a project that I'm working on that will indeed assist the ascension. And it's really important during these times that we look to ancient sites and we look to gateways, because it's here that we have an opportunity to exist in complete consciousness, unified consciousness. Now, what's happening in terms of the solstice currently is, in the UK, we're currently going down into full lockdown. Access to the gateways is really limited. This is what the elite are very knowledgeable about, and there's a pause coming in from the global elite, which is preventing that access in terms of the ascension. So there's a lot of talk in our ascension community about time, the end of time, the coming of the age of Aquarius, the conjunctions, of course, that take us into the oneness, which is the marriage or the union of sacred masculine and sacred feminine. So the return of the void, which also means we begin to unlock real-time metaphysics. However, there are many problems to solve currently, as we all know. So the density of the collective is being driven down, and that needs to be solved by quality work and quality inner work. And our community often doesn't address the advanced internal work that is an absolute requirement of revolution. So that's what I specialize in. It's a complex formula and structure because we're constantly responding to solving problems in terms of our own hijacks, in terms of programs and exchanges with others. The collective being played or orchestrated as well. So in order for us to really step over the bridge of ascension, and we hear it in the prophecies, etc., there are certain relevant initiations and contracts and outstanding historical contracts that we need to solve. Now, as you know, this is really, really important. So I work with metaphysics, ancient sites, I work with ancient Egypt, I work with timelines, I work with contact. Everything about my work is about working in the direct experience. So 10th of December, we have contact in the White Desert. And I mean, it's the kind of contact that is so pure and so sacred and so close. So contact is imminent. I also work with an extraordinary Egyptologist in Egypt who reads the texts. We have evidence of our extraterrestrial origins through the texts, or the glyphs that are written into some of the monuments. And some of that work we do is massively underground. It's not mainstream information. In fact, most of the authentic research that is taking place in terms of ascension and contact, and especially ancient Egypt, it has to come from the work that is on the ground. It has to come from on the ground research. It has to come from the work at sites, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a breath because, of course, my background is massive in terms of the work that I do. So in terms of the ascension, what I deliver.
Well, let's hang on for a second, just for the listeners who don't know. Let me give you a break, because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, and this is a really important time for the human race. I truly believe that. But between now and the next 30 days are going to be huge for the human race, and I just want you to explain to the listeners what ascension is and what does it mean.
Okay, so ascension doesn't mean that we're going to shoot off planet. Ascension means that we move into the advanced healing and awareness states. So this is the going in process that's been happening, and the solstice and equinox gateways are hugely important in terms of this. So this year has been really important in terms of these gateways. So they're precursors to ascension journeys. So the spring equinox here in the UK, it was so timed with the lockdown in terms of COVID. The summer equinox, the autumn equinox, and this winter equinox, giving us key and perfectly aligned gateways that allow us the integration of the work that has not been done. So we're in this super potential possibility. It's so potent. We're going to feel like at times we have vertigo in terms of seeing ourselves, seeing the truth, the shocking truth in terms of who we are, what humanity is. These are all symptoms of waking up. These are all symptoms of the ascension. Your frequency will also be impacted. So ascension symptoms can be driving up your frequency, and at the same time you'll reach those highs and you'll also reach the lows. You might feel massively unbalanced. You might feel discombobulated. These again are all ascension symptoms. At the moment, what I'm seeing in a lot of my clients is this sense of hopelessness, and those individuals are really awakening to the empathy and the sympathy and the compassion for the collective in terms of what's taking place in terms of COVID. So COVID is very much the vehicle in which we can step into the ascension. Ascension means, yes, we move through our own internal processes of transformation, then our exchanges and human relationships can be transformed. And what the ascension is very much calling us to look at currently is this: to move from self-serving agenda, i.e. elitism at every dimension of our lives, to transform that so we can enter into a sustainable existence, a sustainable and loving existence. Now, compassion is a very interesting reality when the agenda is being driven by COVID. So there is a massive manipulation game taking place, which is also eroding the ascension and eroding some of the timelines. So we have to be very realistic about what's happening and prepare ourselves. So preparing ourselves in terms of our own protection and protecting our sovereignty and returning to it, returning to the prophecies, returning to the creation stories, returning to the magic, returning to creator, returning to contact. So these are all points in our community that, of course, that have been researched and theorized about and talked about. But again, we're coming into a time where the ascension means contact at every dimension of all of the research gateways that have appealed to us over decades. So it's an extremely exciting time. If you're prepared, you'll have contact. If you're prepared, you'll have the extraordinary guidance to take you out of the hijacks, to transcend the density of the false matrix, to transcend the challenges, to transcend the programs, the preset programs that enslave us. So it's a huge time to celebrate, and at the same time, we're going to lose many in terms of the ascension, in terms of false light gateways. So it's a huge time to honor the process of ascension and understand why it's happening historically. So for a phase of 26,000 years, this is not just about this incarnation, it's about multiple incarnations being constantly put on pause because of the insidious programming that was put into place to separate us from a sacred and sovereign existence. So ascension is our basic sovereign right. That's where we are during these times. So as above, so below, so within, so without.
All right. So I have a couple questions. When you talk about, when you say it's that the manipulation that I guess we're seeing with the media and everything else is with COVID and everything is kind of driving our energy negative, right? It's you said it's corroding the timeline. What do you mean by that, corroding the timeline? That sounds really scary.
It's scary and not. So we have a deliberate agenda currently to slow the evolutionary process down. And of course, through the text, the ancient text, whether it's Mayan, whether it's Egyptian, we know that the ascension is now. So these are the facts that we're dealing with. For those of us who are awakening, which I expect your listeners are interested in that, or are indeed awakening in terms of what's been happening during the current year, to have the truth on the timelines is massively important. And again, I'm not just working with external factors or external hijacks. What I also want to take us to is our own legacy of programming that comes through our genetics, comes through our societies, and comes from not working on ourselves. So we have glitches in our own timeline, which also corrodes the timeline. So we have an individual responsibility to take at this time too. So it's not just about the elite, because our enslavement is as a consequence of investing our power in the elite. So this is where the revolution begins. This is where your reality revolution begins. Your density impacts the timelines you can access. So it's rather like the bridge into your future is not available to you. You cannot see it, you cannot feel it, you cannot intuit the path. However, once you begin changing your frequency, which is why gateway work is important, earth grid work is important, sacred work is important, truth, sovereignty is important, all of these things that are really showing up in the COVID crisis, in politics, etc. Truth is really center pin as a theme currently for humanity, right? And if we are speaking about this, truth is the driving force that takes us into a higher frequency. So we have this deconstruct, this dismantling that is taking place. And it's harsh, and the reality of it is that it's harsh. So we got to find innovative ways to raise our frequency, to rise like the phoenix. And I'm seeing it through our communities. I'm seeing amazing individuals leading and pioneering projects for social change or innovation. So we're being called to become innovative and respond to the problems of the elite. So when I say the corrosion of the timelines, I mean, yes, the timelines were massively manipulated with the fall of ancient Egypt. And we see that written through especially the Roman temples in the later periods. You can see how magic and illusion replaces the sacred. So this part is hugely important. This is where we're looking at the corrosion of the timeline, the corrosion of the sacred timeline, is where the Romans put into place the Gregorian calendar. And this is where we're going back into the sacred timeline means we need to be much more aware of the gateways, the astrological gateways, so that the themes of our ascension can be firmly made visible. The space within ourselves, so that we can align with what needs to take place within, so what needs to take place externally in terms of authentic and genuine steps in pathway. So we're really creating sovereign timelines for ourselves that are found in our sacred and sovereign truths and our destiny. So we're not working or we're not living in programs that enslave us in any role that we find ourselves in life. I mean, I can speak about this for many, many hours. The insidious nature is found in programming, it's found in everything that we've inherited. And this is what massively controls us. And then we're orchestrated by the elite. So those who are really smashing through the veil at the moment are really discovering their sacred and sovereign power, and they're being called as warriors to respond and to create new earth structures and systems. And that's part of my very special interest in terms of supporting community as well. So the erosion of the timeline is an important feature. However, we can drive off the density as well, because as alchemists, we should be able to play the positive and negative if we're stepping into our sacred frequency or higher frequency. So the picture is not fatal. However, the deconstruction of humanity at this time, we're moving through the birth canal of a new humanity. It is not going to be perfect. It is not perfect. We know this, right? Yeah. So I am very clear in terms of exposing the truth on this. We're in a precarious and extremely serious situation. Thank you for inviting me on your show. I mean, it's so extraordinarily important. Let me give you an example. I'm a gatekeeper, and I am a gatekeeper of the sites that I just outlined. I've got a property right on the edge of the Sahara. I'm opposite Abyssinia, which has one of the oldest pyramid complexes. It's fourth dynasty. That complex and Abu Ghraib align me with my past life memories. I have the memories of working with the sacred technologies intact, and I'm a formidable contactee. And also, when I take people out in terms of contact, we have contact. The ships come in, and I get time, date, and location. So the work that I do is happening at an extraordinary level, and I'm not just speaking about it. So there is hope. I promise. I promise there's hope. And I mean, today on the 21st of December, holy shit, we should be praying for contact wherever you are locked down into the earth grid, and feel the gravity. So you use the density of what's happening, and then that can also open gateways. But you have to like drop down through into the earth frequency, the sacred and sovereign earth frequency. Remember, the earth is an incredible technology in terms of assisting us with ascension. So everything that we just described earlier in terms of programs and the contamination and the hijacks of our ascension, all that disconnects us from this supreme technology that can always assist us in resetting us and earthing us and logging us into the memories and the truth and the histories of the ascension on earth in previous times. So that part is super exciting. And if you love ancient sites work, I mean, really look beyond all of the theory and the academic stuff and really get into why those sites were built as monumental temples to ascension and gateways for time travel. So we're in an extraordinary time, and many of your listeners will indeed be waking up. But we gotta call in the contact that aids us and in our community. Some of us are making breakthroughs, but we still don't care about what's happening to the rest of humanity. So those of us who are making it, we need to really be calling in humanity with the kind of prayers where the gateways are open and the contact can indeed become visible and present, so we can have the intervention should the gateways be continuously corrupted or the timelines be continuously corrupted by the elite and that which is dark. So a few weeks ago, I'm on my gateway and I start opening the gateways, and there is a massive battle of light and dark. I mean, and when the battles take place, it's physical, it is metaphysical. We're holding down so much in terms of the sovereignty of humanity during these times. There are other gatekeepers across the world that I know and I work with. If your listeners want to know where people are, it's really easy for me to share some of that information.
Yeah. Are there any gateways in the United States?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Where is there a list of where the gateways are?
Yes. Mt.Shasta is one of them. I've worked an event there to open the gateways, and there's a lot of really immensely solid gatekeepers in that area. So Mt.Shasta is one of your primary gateways. If you're in LA, then Lake Shrine is an extraordinary gateway in terms of Yogananda and what he laid down in previous times. So if your listeners just Google into place Earth Grid, start to see the gateways, the energy pathways. Sedona, of course, is a vortex location. So really looking at Arkansas as well. New York even is a gateway, of course. So we're really looking at...
Yeah, they're not letting anybody move around New York right now.
They're not letting anyone move around at all in the UK as well. And again, that is such a hub. New York, London, these are the hubs for the corroded timeline, the third dimensional timeline. So you can see the massive lockdown happened yesterday in London, just in time for the solstice, right? Yeah. So it locks down the movement. And of course, London is so insidious in terms of the global syndicate. So we're really needing to start putting together the tiny fragments of truth that's happening. Look at the lockdowns and look at how it's coinciding around the solstice, around the equinox, and look at what's happening to our capital cities. The capital cities are the hubs. They're profoundly affecting our freedom of movement, and these hubs are being driven down in terms of frequency, and that then puts into place frequency and density, puts into place the timeline. So we're getting this massive pause in terms of our evolution. So where we should genuinely be in terms of our ascension, the reality gap is just crazy, right? Because we can see our dreams, and then we're also at the same time looking at all the information that's been in the community and going, holy shit, what the hell is going on in terms of where we should be and why aren't we there? So we really need to become immensely responsive in terms of what's happening, because we're in the middle of a massive hijack on the ascension. But if we know it's taking place, then we can respond. The gateways, the energy pathways, these give you a lock-on into a higher frequency mode and modalities of consciousness that allow you to lock into your gift that may not be live, may be sleeping. So this is important that you get that plug in energetically so that you can clean and clear and transform your energy systems, and that then also at the same time shifts these low density programs and allows you to reset your potential and reset your hope, reset your frequency, reset your peace, for example, too. Yeah. So these states are all very, very important because, of course, the density is taking so many, many individuals into immense fear. I did a conference in New York maybe a month ago from Cairo, and even those speaking were so driven by the density of the collective. I mean, we don't even know who our leaders are in terms of our community at this time. So it's a pretty precarious time. So all I'm going to say is I can give people pointers in terms of resource and emergency response, but you've got to keep plugged into those ARC resources, those individuals who are speaking the truth, and they've always speak the truth. They usually live on the outside of the community because they're not mainstream. They never were mainstream because that isn't part of the Ascension. It's not part of the New Earth. We're completely the opposite of that, right?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, does this have anything to do with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction?
Well, this is something that you were speaking with me about earlier. All I'm going to say is that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is taking us into this alignment or this possibility of revolution, which comes from the birth or the union of masculine and feminine once again. So we're getting back into a creation principle, and that creation principle is going to log us back into a creation story. And again, we're in this birth canal currently and a return to light, possibly because, of course, we have our free will here on the planet. And the elite game is highly divisive, whether it's through technology, whether it's through the COVID game of manipulation currently. You'll have to delete that part. But what I'm currently extremely concerned about is that we get as many people through the Ascension gateway, the Ascension portal. So this is where you got to do the work. It's not about waiting for someone else to do it for you. It's about being aware of the gateways, which I've always been since childhood. So you're aware of these gateways showing up. Equinox, solstice. So that's the time that you dig in. That's the time you show up at a site. That's the time when we are in a conjunction, which brings forward the creation principle. So it's also linking us with the precession gateway, our central sun, and the galactic sun, the 7 gateways of the planet activated so we can travel to and through the central sun. So that's why this conjunction is particularly important during these times. Ancient sites are important. Why? Because they create the structure and the model so the timeline can be exact and reset to the sacred and sovereign. Are you aware that multiple sites in ancient Egypt are clocks, and those clocks have been carefully worked with for a sacred and sovereign timeline? So the astrological and the universal gateways, the galactic gateways, they got to be earthed and they've got to be anchored. They've got to be earthed and they've got to be anchored through us as human beings, and they've got to be earthed and anchored through the structures, through the technologies, the ancient structures that the ancient ones left behind, so we could save our future, right?
Yeah. So how long do we have until the opportunity is no longer there?
Wow, interesting one. If we're being driven down and we're gradually moving into sleep, if we're in that mode and it's difficult to awaken us, I mean, we will lose many. So in terms of the gateways, every time we hit a solstice or an equinox gateway, every time you go to a sacred site, this is in your favor to drive up your frequency to hit the ascension. So what I'm saying with this is we need help to keep driving this forward. You need help to keep driving yourself forward. I would say from here on in, I don't think it's necessarily a month. I think we've got again, it's coming up to the spring equinox. And I think that's when we're going to be in a high ascension mode. Mm-hmm. And we have the capacity to integrate the advanced frequencies and an advanced spectrum of intelligence as human beings, because again, that's what we have to do. If it's showing up in our everyday life, we know we're hitting the right buttons, the right contracts, hitting the right protocol, the right processes in terms of the ascension, right?
Yeah.
This stuff is really important. So it's extremely complex. Why? Because the erosion of the timelines and the erosion of our sacred and sovereign power has been a complex process. I mean, and controlling timelines and controlling gateways is an extremely complex process, right?
Yeah.
You know about this stuff, right?
Yeah, we've been talking about it. I mean, it's all about how our consciousness we're only running about, it's like our brains are only in safe mode. Our consciousness isn't even correct. We're not even experiencing life the way we should.
Absolutely. And thank you for being an interviewer who completely gets what I'm saying. Because often I do interviews and because the radio interview or the whatever it can be, very theory-based or academically inclined or agenda-driven in terms of
we totally
political.
Get it. We totally get it. Our people get it. We get it. We know what's going on. We get it.
Our greatest ally is ourselves at the moment. I mean, to discern truth within ourselves, to kick ass in terms of our programming, our healing, our insidious attachments, our good thoughts, our bad thoughts, our good feelings, our bad feelings, our ability to be conscious of right path over wrong path. All of these are superb spiritual processes, protocol, practice. And waking up is about engaging with these common sense protocols so we can become much more complete as human beings. I think that's what this is about. Our identity is at stake. Our hearts are at stake. Our minds are at stake. We're being bombarded by frequencies from technology that is insidious to our sovereignty and our freedom. We have to prepare so that we are so much more protected. And again, this is one of my reasons to not only understand sacred and sovereign and metaphysics and raising frequency and healing ourselves and becoming aware and awake, but to bring in the kind of contact that can close the gateways on the elite agenda at whatever dimension it is operating in your life.
Now, a lot of us, and I'll be honest with you, me, I as well. It just seems it seems depressing. Like the last.
I know, I can read you. I got you.
You know what I mean? Like it seems
Yeah, I got you.
it seems like we're losing, and the elite
Okay.
is gonna win.
Okay.
Is that just what they want us to think?
I promise on certain gateways, yes, if we don't respond, yes, if we don't take action. So one of the incentives that I work with, one of the projects that I work with is Gateway Arc Resources, and we have to mobilize as a community. We have to mobilize, Michael, as a community. We have to work together. I'm going to be based out in Egypt permanently. I've built a project that can be used to help people globally, and I've been working globally for the last 20 years, and the level of metaphysics I work with online shows up whether someone is in person or thousands of miles away. So we have ways in which we can assist and help, but a lot of the sentiment in our community is, don't do it, someone else will do it for me. Or my reference point is this particular expert, right? And I'm going to quote them, and I'm okay. And that is absolute bullshit. So this has created a lot of political conflict in our community, because the ego is the most divisive technology, and we must master it in order to be free. It's crazy stuff, but I've been working on this all of my career. I mean, when I showed up in London, I was given a job at the College of Psychic Studies based on, I suppose, my ability and just uniqueness in terms of how I work metaphysically. And that's been central. Excellence has always been central in terms of my journey with this work. And if we don't have the genius and the excellence and the real-time metaphysics, we are a little bit screwed. So this is where the frequency signature is missing, and this is what creates the corrosion of the timeline, but also the corrosion of our connection with our galactic families, with our galactic brothers and sisters, with contact. So this part is really, really important. I can read your frequency. I read frequency really, really well. And if we can analyze it, then we can get in and solve it. And this is what we need to do. We can't just speak about the ascension if we don't know how to assist in it. So our response must be absolutely 100% precise, because we cannot make any mistakes during this time, because we're losing too many. And I work with Ascension. I'm an Ascension leader. Conscious Life's just asked me to be a speaker on Ascension for a very small project that's happening in 2021. I'm regarded as an Ascension pioneer. We got to throw out of our community those who are not really doing a real job, real service. And I mean, this is in every community. So we got to get really super tight. We got to get really, really strong in terms of our own integrity. And we've got to get to those people who are absolutely skilled and it is their destiny to assist us.
So what can the average Joe do? Like if we can't go to Mt.Shasta, if we can't go to Sedona, we
Absolutely.
can't
Okay.
what can the normal just person that has to go to work and come home and go to work and come home, what can they do to assist
Believe
with
me,
this?
I go to work, I go home, I'm a mom, I've been a single mother. It's not about me having this special life, and I'm completely normal. I do a lot of assistance work. So on the ground in Egypt, I'll do assistance work, I'll do charity work. I mean, I roll my sleeves up and I help. And I think that's part of what we can do as ordinary human beings, to get out in nature, wherever that may be, in terms of your own location. Hugely important. Listen to shows like this where people are not bullshitting you, they're giving you the truth, they're asking authentic questions, there's no leading questions, there's no agenda. Get to those people are ARC resources, that part is important. Find your community, whether it's online. I mean, people are feeling super disconnected, so make the effort to enter into online communities. Make the effort to not only obtain information. I think this is one of the reality glitches. People are still in a third dimensional timeline around how they educate themselves. So they're still learning in school and yet expecting to know about quantum, the Ascension, metaphysics, contact, etc., etc. You can't learn about these concepts, these reality gateways in third dimension timeline. It does not work. So you will be contaminated by the misinformation that's been deliberately planted. And we know that misinformation has been deliberately planted in our arena, because there's a lot of individuals in our arena currently who should be making massive breakthroughs and they're not. So quite simply, whether we're doing spiritual work or whether we are just going to work on a 9-to-5 basis, I mean, isn't it just wonderful to be present? So if you work in a restaurant, if you're looking after family members, if you're looking after your children, to be grateful every single day in terms of what you have, be grateful in terms of your heart and the love that you have, and center on the very, 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 very most important thing about living as a human being on Earth, as a planet. When we lose everything, we have love, and it is only love that truly, truly, truly is worth it. Right?
Yeah. So basically just get out there and be the best dang person you could be.
Yes, totally. And I mean, it's not like be the best damn person, i.e. ego, I have self-gain, my agenda is to gain success, blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. It's about being the most genuine person you can be and being able to sit with anybody and everybody and hold space for them and have respect and honor for them if they have integrity and if they are seeking your help. So we can do this in moments of exchanges. We can hold a door for someone. We can say hello to them if you see someone by themselves, if you feel the pain in another human being. I think that's what we're scared of, and that's what we're being programmed during this current COVID crisis, to fear everything.
Yeah.
That is, to fear all of those ordinary exchanges.
Yeah,
and that needs to stop.
They try to, don't talk to anybody. Stay 6 feet away, and
Yes.
don't give anybody hugs, and be scared. Be very, very scared. It's ridiculous.
It's the biggest killer of our frequency, and it's the biggest killer of love and happiness, and it's a massive perpetrator of fear. Absolutely. And while I have been basing myself out in Egypt, I have not experienced any COVID restrictions. In fact, quite the opposite. No masks for 4 months. Right?
Yeah.
So Egypt has dropped their vaccination program based on the low numbers of COVID. I mean, there's a question, right?
Well, you gotta wonder what's really
Right.
going on, and when it affects
Right.
your DNA. What are they really doing? I've heard, and I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for saying this, but I've heard that the vaccination actually cuts you off from God.
Right. I
That's
can
scary.
only I can only speak about this in terms of one of my great friends. She contracted COVID at the end of 2019. She was in China, so she caught the most virulent strain, the first strain in Beijing. She's been on an extraordinary healing journey. She is extremely experienced in terms of esoteric arts and work. I think it saved her life.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the biological problems that result, of course, are going to drive down your density, and of course are going to disconnect you from Creator. But again, she's healed herself and she's healing herself, and she couldn't be any stronger in terms of her commitment to the Ascension and her commitment to service. So in many respects, we can perhaps utilize COVID as a real time of deconstructing everything, all the false props, attachments, and then coming back to this purity so we can find our way back to God. You're absolutely right when you speak of this, but I think it's the entire purpose of COVID is to disconnect us from the Ascension and from Creator and from contact. And that also goes with the Starlink project as well. I mean, the Earth is being surrounded in low density frequencies that can be utilized to manipulate our reality. And again, we just have to find our way through in terms of our sacred and sovereign frequency.
And it can be
really
done.
Key.
It can be done.
Yeah, sure, it can be done, and I would be so happy to join up with you and get this out to your listeners, so we're mobilizing much more of a community effort, because we have to weave communities across the planet to do this, so we're all helping each other. I mean, when one community is weak, the other community is strong. So this is the alchemy of the times, and we're being asked to stretch ourselves beyond anything we've experienced before, so we're not sitting in our separate islands in terms of our reality. We have to address what is happening, and we have to address creating the crisis response so we can really make the Ascension happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
How
I
much
feel
time?
really strongly about it. I'm
How
so
much?
strong about it.
No, I'm right there with you, and I'm really worried.
Yeah.
I'm really worried that we may be losing this battle, because a lot of people are just sitting around on their sofa and saying, "Oh well, let so and so handle it, or so and so will handle it," and
Yes.
I'm just gonna sit on my couch, and that's not how this is gonna be won. It's not going to be won by sitting on your couch. You need to get out there.
Yes.
You need to be nice. You need to get involved in your
Yes.
community, and
Yes.
you need to love your neighbor, and
Yes.
like never
Yes.
before. And you need to do that now, and ignore what the elites are telling you, and get out there and do what needs to be done so that we can accomplish this, because this is important. Has this ever happened in the past where an ascension was stopped?
Oh my goodness. That's an interesting question. You know, through the Dendera zodiac, if any of your listeners are interested, it's an artifact that was stolen by the French. It's in the Louvre in Paris. The Dendera zodiac is a time masterpiece, and it documents the precession of the equinox and the ascension. So yes, the Dendera zodiac documents the fact that the timelines are contaminated. And one of my close colleagues in Egypt is working on decoding Esna Temple. I mean, there's been teams working on decoding Esna Temple since the 40s. The timelines have been very definitely contaminated, tampered with before. And as we know, Egypt was raped in terms of the laying down of the Greek and Roman empires, and then going onwards, the Renaissance, and then going forward, of course, the Industrial Revolution. And then in, of course, the 20th century with the discovery of Tutankhamun, I mean, the elite were just buying up, absorbing into their collections so many powerful devices, technologies of real-time ascension, which the ancient Egyptians have complete knowledge of through the texts, through the sites, through the technologies. So, yeah, we can trace it. As soon as we head into the Gregorian calendar, that's when our timelines are completely distorted. And that's when the elite have us in their hands. So that's what we're looking at now. We're looking at correcting this timeline. Remember, it's a 26,000-year gateway. So this is, okay, the ascension's on. When we're hitting a 26,000-year gateway, the possibility of ascension is like outstanding, phenomenal. We're heading into a complete revolution. So the COVID agenda is driving the disconnect, which you've correctly analyzed. And what we have to do is drive up our frequency so we can reset the timeline. So what we can ultimately do at this time, and this is really hopeful, we can recalibrate, reset multiple lifetimes, and we can at the same time generate the resource from multiple timelines and from multiple lifetimes. So remember this, once our frequency raises, we're out of the third dimensional timeline, but we're still in it, right? So, yeah. But we're given many, many, many more options. So that part is really important, right?
Yeah.
So that we can draw in a resource. So if we're good, we're raising our frequency, and if we're good, we're tapping into more of that resource, whether it is the wisdom of yesterday or the wisdom of tomorrow. And then as we build up our process and our practices, then we can start to build our resource. So we're drawing on ascension lifetimes from thousands of years ago. So when the story was as pure as it could possibly be, and again, this is completely in line with our research in Egypt, the text, the evidence, the creation stories. And once we hit that level of ascension, the gods can walk with us on earth, which is what the temple scenes in ancient Egypt describe. So the gods walking amongst us, and that's what we're ultimately looking to create. And again, we have to pray for contact. We have to pray to Creator. We have to stop allowing other people to do everything for us, because we are giving every lifetime away to the elite. I mean, our souls are being farmed, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we got to correct it. We can correct correct it. If we got the information, we can correct it.
And we've got time. We've got plenty of time. We just need to get out there and do it.
Absolutely. And Michael, I gotta go. I gotta run because
Tracey, quick, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on tracyash.com, and you can find me in Cairo with my retreat center conference facilities project, where we're working the gateways and sharing everything that we have with you.
All right, tracyash.com, everybody. We'll be right back on Conflict Radio right after this. Welcome back to Conflict Radio. That was Tracey Ash. I hope everybody checks out her website, tracyash.com, just traceyAsh.com. If you can figure out where these portals are, just go to her website. You can find where these portals are. If you can get to them, get to them. What could it hurt, right? Do what you need to do to be a good human being. What could it hurt? Go. Be nice to somebody. Talk to somebody. Give them a hug. If it looks like they need a hug, give them a hug. Stop being controlled and stop being afraid. I'm just going to go ahead and end this because I want to get it up on YouTube as fast as possible and up on my Spreaker and iTunes as fast as possible. Just remember, you can always find us at www.conflictradio.net. You can find us on Twitter. There's a link to our Twitter on the YouTube channel there. Just go out, look at the top. We're on Facebook. We are on Spreaker and Apple iTunes and all of the normal podcast catchers. Until next time, batten down the hatches, be safe, be nice, and we'll see you soon.